For more on this, I'm joined by political analyst Michael Geoghegan. Good afternoon to you, Michael.
Good afternoon.
So we're just listening there to Andrew Scheer announcing this tax cut proposal, saying that it is really the purpose of it is going to be putting more money into the pockets of Canadians. He sort of outlined the numbers for a single income home for around $440, for a double income home around $850, reducing, of course, the tax from 15% to 13.75%. What are your thoughts, and how well do you think it's going to resonate with voters?
Well, I'm not sure how well it's going to resonate with voters, but I think it's an excellent first step. There's certainly evidence to suggest that the changes that were made in the way we measured CPI since 1980 has had the effect of underreporting the real inflation rate. So that means Canadians are both underpaid and overtaxed because we haven't been adjusting those tax brackets. And so a lower income tax rate on the lowest income tax bracket is an excellent move. And moreover, as we're now figuring out, providing tax cuts to the wealthy doesn't really do a lot. It just means more money going offshore. But if you can get more money in the hands of working class and middle class Canadians, those working class and middle class Canadians spend that money. They go to their local businesses. They buy products and services, and then it goes out into the economy. So it's definitely a good move from both those standpoints.
And he also was asked, when he was taking reporters' questions about balancing the budget, and he's saying that that is something that they're committed to being able to do in 5 years, cutting away costs that are unnecessary, but also putting more funding into healthcare and education.
Well, it's going to be a real challenge to balance a budget under those circumstances. Healthcare, like I say, talking about the real inflation rate, I mean, the healthcare is always going up in terms of cost by more than 10% a year. And so it is increasingly a struggle for governments to fund it. But certainly alleviating some of the tax bracket for those that, quite frankly, are working at or below the poverty line, I think is a sensible move. And certainly one that I hope the other political parties will look at and emulate, because it is kind of puzzling that we do have people making less than the poverty line and still expected to pay a substantial amount in income tax. So I think that helps redress it. But certainly, unless there's economic growth, it's going to be hard to balance the budget.
How do you think the Conservative leader handled questions with regards to candidates, the credibility of candidates? He has been talking about, someone is in the past remarks or apologizing for those past remarks show change. We also heard some of that from Jagmeet Singh as well. And how do you think that those issues are being handled in this election when the leaders are also being called out on their past comments and whether or not they should be apologizing or taking, action on that?
Well, it's a very difficult situation for any political leader and for any political candidate. And unfortunately, it's going to be one where, we're all future candidates are all going to have extensive social media. They're all going to have that electronic baggage. And so I think we're going to have to adjust our parameters somewhat from you've never said or done anything controversial, which would eliminate 95% of the potential candidates out there, to one where if it hasn't been too egregious and you have apologized and your viewpoint has shifted from whenever you posted that, however many years ago, then I think Canadians are starting to feel that we can give a mulligan to those individuals. But of course, if there's a repeated pattern and there is no apology or acknowledgement for the egregious statement, well, that's still going to be beyond the pale for Canadians, I suspect.
Another big issue, Michael, that came up with regards to the gun violence in Mississauga, Ontario. We know that all the leaders now, we understand that the Liberal leader, Justin Trudeau, also commenting on it, expressing concern and commending the actions of the first responders. But gun control, gun violence is also going to be a hot topic on this issue, with all three parties seeming to have slightly different views on how to handle things.
Well, yeah, and gun violence is an issue because, of course, it's generally not law-abiding, gun owners who have licenses and have gone through a training process in Canada to get their firearm acquisition certificate. It's a problem with, a flood of illegal weapons coming across the U.S. border. And so, any kind of handgun ban, any kind of, trying to emulate New Zealand and Australia, well, we don't have a Pacific Ocean between us and the United States. So it's certainly an issue it's more easy to talk about than it is to actually implement effective policy. and certainly we have much lower incidences of gun violence than they do in the United States, and I think that speaks to the fact that we have a much more involved and rigorous process if someone wants to actually acquire a firearm, and I see that as a relatively good balance.
Well, we'll keep a close eye on, of course, the developments over the course of this election. Michael Geoghegan, always a pleasure. Thanks a lot for your time today.
Thank you.